And we're rolling. Hi, this is Mark Goldberg from UN Dispatch, the UN Affairs blog. And I'm talking to Nick Birnback from the United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations, or otherwise known as DPKO. Nick, what's your official title?
I am the Chief of the Public Affairs Unit at the Department of Peacekeeping Operations.
Okay, and what does that mean you do?
Well, I'm kind of like the departmental spokesperson and press officer. I'm kind of the media flack for DPKO.
Now, I detect in your accent that you might be American, and I know for a fact that you're a former Air Force major. Is that correct?
That's right, and I'm actually from the independent and sovereign Republic of Brooklyn.
Ah, there you go. So you've moved far to work. Right by the East River. So Nick, I guess as an American, as a former service member, you're probably and now as a spokesman for the UN Department of Peacekeeping Operation, you're probably in a good as position as anyone to sort of explain to us why we Americans should care about UN peacekeeping.
Sure. I think there's a number of reasons. UN peacekeepers go where others cannot or will not. The peacekeeping is the expression of the legitimate will of the international community, not just a unilateral intervention. So it has a lot of advantages. It provides for burden sharing. The costs are spread out among UN member states. And it provides also for unparalleled legitimacy, because action through the UN means action through the Security Council, which passes resolutions that are legally binding. It's cost-effective as well. The United Nations, because we use troops from all over the world, not just very advanced and very expensive Western troops, our missions cost less. We go everywhere, regardless of whether or not it's in a narrow interest. So I think we bring a lot to the table. We also have a lot of experience in post-conflict operations. We've done over 60 post-conflict operations, and they don't always work. For peacekeepers to be sent somewhere, it means that by definition the situation has already gotten pretty bad. But we've managed to build up a record where we've enjoyed some successes as well, and we have a lot of experience to bring to the table as well.
I mean, that's something, at least in sort of you look at sort of where American troops are deployed right now, we're at least struggling to sort of, I think, do the kind of work that the UN has done in other places. What are some sort of the success stories that you're talking about? It's not something.
Sure.
It's not something frankly you really hear when you think about peacekeeping. A lot of Americans initially think Bosnia, or they think things like sexual abuse, but there are these success stories, and I'm wondering if you might be able to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I think obviously that is one of the public relations challenges that we deal with, is that the telegenic failures and the shortcomings of UN peacekeeping, which are quite real, make the press a lot more than some of our successes. Our successes tend to be sort of fairly quiet. But let me give you a couple of examples. In Liberia, the situation is actually pretty good right now, and they have a legitimately elected president, Africa's first elected female head of state. In Sierra Leone, the situation is pretty good. In Haiti, things are a lot better than they were before. Even in the Democratic Republic of Congo, things are trending in a positive direction. And in any one of these operations, if you'd look back just a few years ago, you probably wouldn't have believed that things would have progressed as far as they have. Now, ultimately, when something moves forward like this, it's because of the hard-fought efforts of the local population themselves. They are primarily the ones who are responsible. UN peacekeeping is an enabler. So in these situations, the ones that I mentioned and others, Namibia, Mozambique, El Salvador, Cambodia, to name ones from the past, we were facilitators and implementers. But the reality is that the credit goes to the people who are on the ground to do it. But what we do is we give them a fighting chance. What we do is provide a window for a peace process to take effect. And it's sort of like a key lesson for us that peacekeeping accompanies a political process. It doesn't substitute for one. And so when we're in a situation where there is no peace to keep, we tend not to do so well. But when the parties are ready and we can play an effective role, I think we have a pretty good record.
I guess the most visible peacekeeping operation now is UNAMID, the joint AU-UN peacekeeping mission in Darfur, and you just mentioned that when there's no peace to keep, the job becomes much more difficult. Why is that sort of part of the reason why we see the Darfur mission sort of faltering?
Well, I don't think the Darfur mission is faltering. I think that's the wrong word. I think that what's happening is that it's starting up now, so it's confronting a number of very serious challenges. Mm-hmm. And these challenges are, based on a couple of different things. One of them is there isn't a lot of appetite in the international community to send their sons and daughters to Sudan right now, to Darfur. Mm-hmm. The UN... as you know, the UN has no standing army or standing forces. Every time the Security Council authorizes us to launch a new operation, we have to then go and generate the forces to undertake that operation. Now, the Council passed a resolution saying that we were authorized to deploy some 26,000 troops, uniformed personnel, to Darfur. But those troops don't belong to us. They belong to the membership. So we need to go to them and get them to basically lend us their forces to undertake these missions. So, so we encounter difficulties in this case, for example, we simply aren't getting some of the crucial capabilities that we need. Helicopter assets, both transport and attack helicopters. We're not getting what we call multi-role logistics. These are all specialized capabilities that actually make a mission go, and we have not gotten. The membership hasn't given us those units yet. So that's one problem. Another is that we have seen a pattern of delaying tactics by the government of Sudan. We've seen a pattern of sort of small-scale, slow-down type activities, and that's made it difficult for us to do our job. We recently signed something called the Status of Forces Agreement with the government of Sudan, and we're hoping that will help move things forward more quickly. Another thing is that there is the political process is lagging behind, and without a viable political process, UN peacekeeping is very unlikely that UN peacekeeping will succeed. And in Sudan and in Darfur, what you're seeing is there's still fighting going on between a number of the rebel groups and the government of Sudan, between inter-rebel fighting between different groups. You're seeing instability on the Chad border. You're seeing a number of factors which are making it very difficult for a peacekeeping operation to deploy. So when you add all of these factors together, you see, deploying into one of the most inhospitable places in the world, I might add, with long supply lines and very little infrastructure, it's really difficult to deploy this operation. So it is a huge challenge, and what you're seeing is the pace is not what we would want. They're not able to accomplish what we would want yet. We're moving forward. Our people are already on the ground, some 9,000 of them, and we're hoping that number is going to grow, and we're hoping the political process catches up. But it is most definitely a very, very serious challenge, and it is a dangerous situation. It's one where things could go very, very wrong very quickly.
Now, you sort of packed a lot in that answer, and one point I want to explore a little more, because it seems to be getting a lot of attention, is this sort of lack of helicopter capacity. You see sort of the figure 24 helicopters being tossed around as sort of, for want of 24 helicopters, the mission is struggling.
Right.
Is that still the case? Are there still sort of no troop contributing countries offering up their helicopter capacity?
Well, here's the deal. The Force Commander puts forward something called the Force Commander's Directive, and it's just basically an articulation of what we need to do the job that the Security Council has assigned to us, right? And in this directive, he's asked for 18 utility helicopters, which are transport and things like that, and then 6 what we call light tactical helicopters, which basically means attack helicopters, which would give us the ability to reinforce quickly and to escalate when necessary in specific situations. What we've got, and you're absolutely right, the membership has not come forward with these capabilities. Helicopters are valuable commodities. There aren't lots of them that are immediately deployable, but having said that, they do exist, but the membership simply hasn't been willing to pledge them thus far. Now, we have had extensive conversations with a number of troop-contributing countries, and we've gotten some pledges. The problem is that a lot of the pledges don't fulfill the technical requirements that we need. We don't just need helicopters. We need helicopters that can do a fairly specific set of things, like fly at night, for example, like carry a certain amount of both load and passengers. Certain member states have offered us helicopters, but they haven't fulfilled the requirements, so we haven't been able to accept them. Now, having said that, we recently did get a couple of new offers, including an offer for some attack helicopters from Ethiopia, who offered us some attack helicopters and some utility helicopters, and we're looking into that. Now, that won't fulfill the entire requirement, but it's a start. But make no mistake, just because it's a start doesn't mean that the capabilities and the requirements go away. We absolutely need these platforms in order to undertake this very, very challenging mission over an enormous territory, which is why you need the air assets in the first place.
I guess sort of what you're saying is that in order for a mission to be successful, you need the support and sort of the robust support of member states, but not any member states, but those member states that have the kind of sophisticated capacity that you described, capacity to deploy helicopters. I'm wondering why is it so difficult to marshal that support? Why can't I suppose the Secretary General is going to meet the President met the President the past few weeks. Why can't sort of Ban Ki-moon just sort of impose upon President Bush to supply him with those kinds of equipment?
Well, there's a couple things there. I mean, the first thing I would say is that one of the real strengths of UN peacekeeping is its diversity. And what that means is that you have troops side by side from all over the world. You have troops from Asia, troops from Africa, troops from Europe. And this is a real strength for us because everybody brings a certain skill set to the table. Everybody brings their own experiences to the table. And it is that amalgam, that alloy, if you like, of all these different countries that deploy on peacekeeping operations that does two things. One, it represents the whole world. When you see all the different flags on people's shoulders deployed side by side, that does show the local population that the world is watching, and that in and of itself has value. Secondly, they have a varying skill set, so what you need is a balance, and that's usually the word we use when we're trying to describe a peace operation, is balance. That we need infantry that is basically there to guard static positions. We need mobility. We need troops that can go out and deploy quickly. That's a different capability. And yes, we need some fairly sophisticated other assets, whether or not it's combat engineers or whether or not it's aviation assets, and those tend to exist only within the force structures of the developed world, right? So those are fewer and far between because not only do they only exist in the force structures of less member states, but there's less of those assets to go around. Whereas, for example, we in general do a pretty good job generating basic infantry units. When we're asking for a helicopter unit, there are less countries that are able to come forward and provide them. Now, in terms of the second part of why can't the Secretary General basically just order member states to give us this equipment, it's just not how the system is designed. Basically, because we have no standing forces, we are reliant on the membership to live up to their obligations and give us the equipment we need to do the job that they've assigned us. So, believe me, the Secretary General has called a wide range of world leaders, and so have we at our level, at the peacekeeping level, called our counterparts to try to prevail upon them to give us this equipment, which is vital to fulfill our mandate. And we've gotten a great deal of it. Also keep in mind that there is a question of overstretch, that there are 20 peacekeeping operations already in the field, 103,000 people in the field, an all-time high. So, the member states also are experiencing a little bit of if you like, donor fatigue, because they're being asked time and time again to give troops to these peace operations, and there's only a limited pool. But without the contribution of member states, the UN's unable to do its job.
I want to actually explore that issue of overstretch for a little bit, because it's something that fascinates me. I mean, people don't realize this, but the department, the budget for all the peacekeeping, you said there are 20 missions in the world right now. Fielding 103,000 peacekeepers, the budget's only something like $6 billion. Is that right?
Yeah, that's about
right. And that's sort of about what the U.S. spends in Iraq in a month. And this fields 103,000 troops all over the world for a year. And sort of the number of missions has expanded rapidly in recent years. And I'm wondering sort of how, if the institution itself has expanded commensurately to the missions that they've been ordered to undertake by the Security Council.
I mean, I think the short answer is no. We have had some growth, and that's it's been most welcome here, for example, at headquarters. But the reality is that we are configured basically to mount one new multidimensional operation. Multidimensional meaning police, military, civilian components all together in one place, right? Mm-hmm. And we're configured to mount one new large multidimensional mission per year. And yet we have been asked to deploy at a timetable much greater than that. I think we've launched 5 new or expanded operations in the last 18 months alone. Mm-hmm. So we are being asked by the membership, who are ultimately our bosses, mm-hmm. to do a lot more with the tools that they've given us. So there is absolutely a question of overstretch. Mm-hmm. There are only so many people that are backstopping these operations. And, these are complex operations. They require a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of mm-hmm. effort. And without adequate staff in order to move the ball forward and to pay attention to all the things that you need to do in order to make a mission successful, it's quite a challenge here on the home front as well as in the field.
What's sort of the tooth to tail ratio for our military friends out there? The ratio of folks doing the logistics back home to right. peacekeepers in the field, and how does that compare to, say, like the Pentagon in Iraq?
Our tooth to tail ratio is much broader than our colleagues in the U.S. Pentagon mm-hmm. or in NATO. I don't know what theirs are, but ours are somewhere in the order of 1 to 100 or a little bit more. I think we have about 700 staff here at headquarters, mm-hmm. And with 103,000 people in the field. I mean, well, mm-hmm. you can do the math. It's over 1 to 100. So it's not where we would like it to be. We would like to have more people here to do the backstopping of each operation.
I mean, I guess it seems to me that like you said, the Security Council is asking you guys to do more and more. I think that there could be peacekeeping operations everywhere from Chad all the way to the Indian Ocean. Very shortly, but it doesn't seem, at least from where I sit. I look at something like the new budget from the president's new budget and sort of underfunds your operation. It seems that your hands are almost tied in a way by member states. And I'm wondering, sort of, do you just sort of do more with less? I mean,
membership is assigning us more and more work, and yet we're not necessarily always resourced in a way to finish what it is that they've asked us to do. That's the reality of the situation. But the point for us is that once we get tasked by the Security Council, which is the body within the UN that deals with issues of breaches of peace and security, we have to move forward. We have to implement. There's no option for us. We don't have the flexibility to say we'd prefer not to go. We can indicate the challenges ahead of time, but once we're ordered to go, we go. So frankly, you are looking at a situation of having to do more with less. You're looking at a situation of having to not have the numbers of people backstopping an operation here at headquarters that you would like otherwise. But one way that we've tried to deal with this as an issue, as a systemic issue, is to go out of our way to leverage partnerships, to work with the African Union, with the European Union, with NATO, with the Economic Community Organization of West African States, or ECOWAS, in fielding missions, and basically to let our partners use their comparative advantages to help us do the mission. So, for example, in a mission like in Kosovo, we don't have military personnel in Kosovo. That the military is done by NATO, and that's one way in which we try to do more with less, is to find others who can help us do. And I think we've done a good job of looking for these strategic partnerships and bringing them along. But it's still ultimately the United Nations that's responsible, and ultimately there still is a danger of us being overstretched to the point where we're unable to fulfill the requirements that the Council's laid out for us.
Should we be sort of pessimistic? Could sort of the sort of peacekeeping just sort of snap soon? Is there a reason for pessimism, looking forward to what the UN is being asked to do versus the resources available to it?
I don't think there's a reason for pessimism. I think there's a reason for concern. That the fact of the matter is that the membership have said indeed that they value UN peacekeeping, and they've turned to us in an increasing amount over the last several years to launch operations. It's an expression of confidence in us, right? It's an expression that the international community feels that we are the best solution that they have for a number of very, very serious problems. And that's fine. But our view is that while that happens, that it needs to be matched with the resources necessary for us to do our job. But the very fact that they have turned to us is in some ways a reason for optimism for two reasons. One, UN peacekeeping is not a war-fighting organization, and we only get turned to when there is a reasonable expectation that peace is breaking out, that we aren't sent in to undertake a hostile intervention. That's not what we do. So the fact that the Security Council has been able to authorize these new missions means that a number of conflicts are in fact coming to a close. That's a good thing. That's a positive thing. That's a reason to be optimistic. The ability of the United Nations as the expression of the international community to fulfill those obligations, to move forward and to actually successfully undertake these operations, that's where we need the support of the membership to make sure that this institution, which is their institution, we are a product of the membership, right? So it is incumbent on them to fund us in a way that we're able to fulfill the requirements that they've set out for us.
Well, Nick, I think we're just about out of time. I appreciate you, speaking to me and ending on a nice note of optimism. Good luck in the future, and hopefully we can maybe have you back for longer in the future, and we can really delve deep into some of these issues. Thanks a lot.
Sure, no problem. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.